final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and joining me I have James. Say hi, James.
Hello, hello.
Well, today we are going to be trying to approach a very broad subject, but we're going to focus on primarily 3 things. The subject is the 50th anniversary of certain classic, iconic kind of television shows that some of us are really into, and it just happens that, this is that year where they're starting to pop and all the news comes about. And, it's funny, even my local newspaper, which is the last place I would imagine they would even care about such a thing, today's front cover was Star Trek, 50th anniversary of Star Trek. But we're also going to talk a little bit about the Monkees and Batman, because it is, believe it or not, the anniversary of these different franchises, if you will, or properties, if you will. And James, why don't you start off with one of your favorite ones?
Well, like you said, it's among our favorites because it meant something to us at the time when we first discovered it, but also because it has such an enduring attachment to us or something. And I've constantly said to you, what is it about what like the things, what is it, why are we so attached to certain things? People, John Wayne, it came and went, people like things, but, around the time of this Star Trek, the Beatles, Elvis, Star Wars, these are things that people, they just don't give it up. And it doesn't seem to ever look like it's going to go away, especially now, the way it's been reinvigorated, all these franchises. And I think of 1966 as a time, it's before both of our time, really.
Yes, definitely.
Everything we're going to talk about, we discovered in its first bunch of reruns, basically, after everybody else had found it and gave up on it. But Star Trek in particular has become something that, I don't want to say it's a religion, because then you get into the John Lennon type of thing, oh, we're bigger than Jesus. But no, Star Trek almost has become like a religion. Now, maybe recently it's had a little wane because of, just there's been a lot of things getting people's attention, but it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. And I say the Monkees were a big deal to me. Now, they didn't have the same longevity over all these years as Star Trek has, but it's still there. They put out an album this year, and it turned out to be a #1 album. And I know there's semantics involved with that, because now everything's a download and stuff. But considering the fact that the Monkees fans are older people, they're still loyal. They still went there and bought the album or the CD or whatever it was that however they purchased it. And they're still going to concerts when they come back and play. Now, again, that's not isolated to them. It's just that meant something big to us. And I'm a huge Beatles fan as well. But there's something about the Monkees that were special, even to the point where the Beatles themselves were very fond of the Monkees, regardless of the fact that people called them the Prefab Four or, fakers or whatever they called them. There was more to it. And the last one I mentioned as part of this trifecta is Batman. And Batman wasn't brand new in 1966.
Right, we're talking about the television show Batman,
yes,
right?
The Batman, the Adam West television show. It wasn't brand new. The thing is, it was brand new for the medium of television, and the kids of the 60s, who are, I guess, the baby boomers or whatever moniker you want to put on them, they discovered them, and the power of television turned Batman into a phenomena. And it was even considered a goof at the time by many people, like the Monkees were a farce. The Monkees were musical Marx Brothers. And Star Trek was gone basically after, it was really gone after 1.5, 2 years, and the letter writing campaigns brought it back, and then it was gone again, probably in a lot of people's minds forever after the third season. Now, were people still fond of it? Sure. Did people watch the reruns and any other forms of books and things that they could get their hands on? Absolutely. And that's the power of it. It didn't die. It wouldn't go away. How many shows have we talked about that came and went, and we have to bring them back by talking about them? It's like, oh, it meant something to us, but it really wouldn't have.
Well, the thing with Batman to also keep in mind, like you said before, for people our age and people maybe even a little older than us, the first visual, live medium for Batman that we probably remember is the television show. But there was serial versions, I believe, black and white versions of Batman that they're historic, but they're really not that memorable and they're really not that accessible.
Exactly. Well, you figure the Superman from the 50s,
yeah,
it was there, but it was forgettable in the sense that it wasn't in color. It basically came and went. It was a big deal at the time. But Batman was in living color right in your living room. It was unbelievable. And even if it was silly, the way I think of it, it's a comic book on TV because the colors were so vivid. The excitement was over the top. The action was really, almost unbelievable. But yet it was fun. It was a comic book. You got to watch it. And that's why people seem to like the Marvel and, some of the other comic book movies that are out right now, because they feel like they're watching a comic book. They can believe it. It's live action, but they can believe it's a living comic book, and it excites them again. It rejuvenates them.
Yeah, that particular version of the show, like you said, it did appeal to kids because it had a kid aspect to it, but it was very hip, very happening of the time that also appealed to adults. It was like, if you're a part of the cool crowd, you're watching Batman because it has this extra thing that normally shows don't have. And, that lasted for a while.
And I have to tell you, as far as Batman is concerned, again, we picked it up probably the early 70s, maybe even like up to the middle 70s, we would have been into it. I think for me, it was a little earlier, like I said, early 70s. I used to go around going pow and biff and pow and all those kind of things. And really, it was probably one of my early favorite shows, and not even, we don't even realize it at the time, it's my favorite show. We don't even use words like that when you're little kids like that.
Well, again, it's repeats we're watching.
Yes. It was so important to us that that's the kind of influence it had. Now, Star Trek, we've talked about that a couple times, and for me, we would find it on Saturday night during reruns. It came back into reruns pretty quick into the 70s, but it wasn't until about, I'd say, the middle 70s that they had the giant convention. That wasn't even supposed to be a giant convention. It was supposed to be a regular convention for fans to get together and celebrate this show that they liked, and some of the stars would appear because they had nothing. Some of them, didn't have, it was in between gigs maybe, or didn't have something to do, and it turned out to be a phenomena of the time. Like, it was almost like recently in New York, they had a special 50th anniversary celebration, Star Trek Missions, they call it. I think it's going to be a new thing they're trying to do, like they used to do at the comic conventions or the creation conventions.
Yeah.
And now this one, I think in proportion, the original one was still bigger because it was like standing room only. It blew people's mind how much excitement and how many people showed up to celebrate it. And I remember watching DeForest Kelley, I guess, on Wonderama or something, talking about why he was in town and why he was there, and they were doing this, and it turned out to be huge, and blah, 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 blah. And things like that. The animated show had come and gone. The reruns were on Channel 11 on like maybe
WPIX, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a Saturday, I think it was like Saturday nights at 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. It could have changed. Yeah. But like, I think Space 1999 came on after it, and I can't remember what was right before it. It was some other probably like kind of sci-fi show or whatever. But I got to tell you, that was an important part of my life. And then as far as the Monkees, let me just say, there was a period of time when I found the Monkees, again, that was probably on Channel 5 in New York, which had different call letters back then, but it was still Channel 5.
I think that was NYW.
It was NYW in the 80s or so, but I think it was Metro Media. So it was a Metro Media company. So it was like WMET. I'd be making it up, so I'd have to guess it. So without doing research, I'll just leave it alone. But it was on after school. So there was probably a block of the Monkees, the Brady Bunch, Gilligan's Island. Maybe there's like something else that I'm forgetting off the top. Maybe it was Genie or something like that, or Bewitched. And those were huge to me. But the Monkees blew me away to the point where at one time in the second grade, whenever I was in the second grade, which was definitely after the Monkees had been off TV officially, I was signing my papers Mike Nesmith. So when we had to do homework I'd write Mike Nesmith because he was my favorite. He's the guy who wore the wool hat, the blue wool hat. It could have been green at some points in the seasons too. And my teacher was like, "Who is this Mike Nesmith?" And I guess by the process of elimination, James is the only one that doesn't have his paper in. So I guess we figured out who Mike Nesmith is. And she told my parents during one of those teacher nights, and my parents were like,
"Your son needs help."
My parents were like, the teacher's like, "Do you know?" And they're like, yeah, he's a big fan of Mike Nesmith, I guess, So, of course, they came home and said, "Your teacher said you're doing this, and you probably shouldn't do it." So, to me, those were things that I still haven't given up on. And it's amazing. It's just amazing to me that to you, to me, to many of our close friends, that this stuff is important. And now you guys and a lot of people have a lot of life-changing things: children's, marriages, divorces, deaths in the family, jobs come and gone. But these things stay constant that we just, for some reason, cannot, we cannot stop being fans. And for me, the Monkees music is still important to me. I still listen to it. I was lucky enough, unfortunately, after Davey had passed, but I was lucky enough to see them with Mike, and he was my favorite. But they did a fantastic show several years ago. I got to see Mike Nesmith by himself also a few years ago, and it was fantastic. And the show itself comes and goes sometimes. They brought it back in 1986 on MTV, made a huge deal about it, and it paid off, and people went crazy for it. And then there was a resurgence for that anniversary. I guess it was the 20th anniversary. And then for the 30th or 40th anniversary, they did a couple specials. And then they got together again, the four of them, and did a special as if, that was in 1996, as if they were still doing the series, as if it was like episode 712 or some number like that. And it comes across as nostalgia, but it's also still entertaining. And a lot, like I said, we'll have feedback. We'll have people say, "Oh, their music was crap." No, a lot of bands and a lot of artists today have people write songs for them. Madonna, Rihanna. I don't even know how many bands. They have other people also write music and write songs for them, and they sing them. Well, in the early days of the Monkees, they were put together, and other people had written the songs. Is that terrible? Well, they weren't portraying a real band. They were portraying a TV band that put out albums that accompanied the show that turned out to be #1 hits, doing as well as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all the huge bands of the time. So to dismiss them or say they're crap or say whatever it is you want to say about them is just wrong, to the point where if you are intellectually honest and sit down and listen to Monkees music, other than just the few hits that you might have heard on the radio, they had good stuff. Did they write it all themselves? No. Did they write some of it themselves, and did they play their instruments and do things? Yes. So all the BS that you hear, there's little elements of it that are accurate, and there's little elements of it that are BS. And I just think that it's a really special time.
Well, for me, from these selections that we're looking at, I think for me the biggest one was probably Star Trek. And just like yourself, I used to watch it on Channel 11. And because I was watching them on repeats, just like you, I really didn't have a concept of seasons in terms of, it was just on, once a week, and I couldn't really tell you like there was an ongoing story or an order to the stories. All I know was that every Saturday in the afternoon, I could watch an episode, and they were interesting. And sometimes they were wearing different uniforms because obviously the show is changing, but I'm not even paying attention to that because I'm focusing on the sci-fi aspect of it, on television. And even though it was old in terms of, this thing is a 60s show, it didn't really bother me too much watching it on television. Granted, of course, everybody knows, even the show producers, the actors, they all admit it, that The only reason Star Trek was able to live beyond the television part was because of Star Wars. When everybody was scrambling for a Star Wars knockoff, Paramount say, hey, whatever happened to that Star Trek thing we had? And, that's how we ended up with, movies and TV shows and this and that and the other. But it still has a certain charm to it. And I know we can pick it apart in terms of, the sets look flat and the acting is funny and, and Shatner is Shatner. But there's something that we're willing to forgive because it's still good. It's still relevant. And the stories are very well, some of them are very well written.
Yeah, there were some very, very highbrow science fiction episodes in Star Trek, as well as some fun, mindless episodes. And then there were a couple clunkers here and there. In any series that goes, 79, 80 episodes, you're going to have a few clunkers. But the thing is, you're absolutely right about Star Trek coming back because of Star Wars. Now, they say, and it's legitimate, there was a couple of potential Star Trek revivals that weren't Star Wars related. But the thing that really put it over the top and made it go from a revived TV show in the middle to late 70s was Star Wars. And they basically fast-tracked that
to a movie
to be Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Right. And they canceled their plans and went straight to the movie.
They took the actual sets and they took the actual things that were going on and turned them into the motion picture and just beefed them up and made them like crazy exciting and things like that. And to me, I love Star Trek the Motion Picture. So again, maybe it's just a quirky thing about me, but people say bad things about that. And I say, wait a minute, that's, you really can't, you have to put it into perspective. And it made a lot of money, and there's a lot of good special effects, and there's a lot of good Star Trek in the motion picture.
One of the best things that I like about the motion picture is that it's a bridge between the series and what comes afterwards. And it visually changed. In other words, the movies kind of kept a certain look when you get to Star Trek II going forward. But Star Trek the Motion Picture was kind of like a hybrid of, oh, you guys remember this old show? Well, we have something new for you now. So the actors look a little different. They're dressed very differently. And when you move forward, they dress completely different. So it's almost like a one-shot type of deal that kind of reawakens your interest in the franchise.
But if you go back to the original series, what they call now the original series, you can have, I've recently rewatched them all. They've been smart enough to try to keep them a little bit relevant in the past, say, 10, 15 years. They went back and remade some of the special effects to make them look more, I guess they used some CGI principles to make them look more modern, and the ships were fluid,
and the planets and
things like that.
Right.
And I got to tell you, they did it flawlessly, and it was really well done. And the special editions of Star Wars, as great as they were in some cases, I think they did a better job with the original series, making it seem like things fit and belonged in a show that was created in 1966 with special effects from 2006, let's say, versus Star Wars, how it's like, bang, all of a sudden, there's a new scene. It's almost like a neon light came on in some scenes and say, hey, we added this, rather than it just being, hey, I didn't realize, but look, that thing really looked natural, just like in some of the way these ships. So Star Trek can last forever. I don't think at all that it will go away. And in fact, at the 50th anniversary, here we are. We've had Star Trek Beyond, which we talked about and spoke of fondly. And we've got Star Trek Discovery coming, which
right around the corner.
We've talked about it briefly, and there's a lot of buzz and excitement with that. And I think they've got some other plans going in addition to, books, comic books.
And comic books, yep.
And so right. I think that's great news. For the 50th anniversary going forward, we have more to look forward to. Now, as far as Batman, well, it so happens that there is a new Batman attached to basically the Batman 66 concept, and there's an animated movie coming out.
Well, that's really interesting. When I first saw that little trailer that they showed everybody, the fact that they got these original two actors to be in their roles, I'm really looking forward to that.
And I've heard it and I've seen it, and it's got the feeling of the show. It's got the look and the feel of it. It's animated, so they can basically do everything they did with the looks and the
They
characters.
sound just like each other.
And
That's the best part.
You know, some people might say, "Oh, Adam West sounds a little older." Well, let me tell you a little secret, boys and girls. He is older, but thank God he's still with us, and they can do that. Just like thank God Shatner's still there in his 80s, and we can still see him. And the same thing with the remaining monkeys, and then we can still see them. That's what makes it fun. And it's nice when they put together a project that these guys are willing to participate in. And sometimes it's for money, and sometimes it's for the fact that it's special.
The thing to keep in mind about Batman also is that from the television show, the different incarnations of Batman that have progressed have been very different from each other. You know, if you look at it in a timeline, for example, it kind of started out as a very silly, weird little show, and you know, when you get to the Keaton era, you know, it got a little more serious. Schumacher got a little weird, but still a combination of, I guess he tried to do a combination of the two, because the villains were way over the top. They were almost a classical television Batman type of villains. And then as you move forward, you know, the Nolan Batman got very, very serious, especially Dark Knight. And now we're in an extremely serious Batman era. So there is a certain progression, and I'm wondering if sometime in the future somebody will want to go back to the retro funny Batman
and lighten it up a little.
Yeah, you never know.
There are good and bad things about the camp aspect of it. But you know what? It's like anything. It's like tastes come and go. And people might want suddenly, oh, I want fancy things or whatever. But it's like, no, it's fun. When you're of a certain age, if you've seen Michael Keaton Batman or if you've seen Nolan Batman, and then you watch this, then it's like, oh, well, how did people watch this? This seems so crazy. But when we've been raised on that, then it's not so nuts. And I say, check it out. Have fun. You don't have to own it. It's just something you can enjoy as another aspect of the things you like. So if you like Batman, you've really got to check out this. And it's just been re-released on, I guess, within the past 2 years on Blu-ray. So you really can't lose because it looks great. And the Monkeys have been put out on Blu-ray this year, and Star Trek is being put out again in its entirety, everything for the anniversary. It might even be right now. It might be coming out like right now in honor of the anniversary. So you've got the opportunity to check out these things in the best looking format that they've ever been.
They also have, as far as Star Trek goes, I know there's a few television specials that are out right now. I think the Smithsonian Channel has one, and there's another one. It might be the History Channel. I'm not sure which one.
It's fun. I'm glad you brought that up because I would have forgotten to say it.
Yeah,
if you get
there's
the
a few.
opportunity to go to the Smithsonian, the annex that's at the Dulles Airport, or now it's called Reagan Airport, the actual model of the Enterprise, which had been for years hanging in the Air and Space Museum on the mall, and then it was moved to the gift shop area.
The gift shop. I remember seeing it in the gift shop.
And it was in a case, but it was really starting to break down because, again, we're talking about a model that at the time when we saw it was 20 to 30 years old, maybe give or take, and now the parts were kind of like breaking almost. The plastic and the wood.
They were starting to split. So now once they refurbished it and they made it all nice,
they took
it's
it
now
all
in the
back.
main area.
Now, it's a mixed bag. Some people will say, hey, they shouldn't have taken it down to the base and rebuilt it because then it's not the same thing. But they did. They repainted it. They revitalized it. They resupported it. They recoated it. New decals. So some people might say, well, it's not the same ship anymore. That's not the model. It's like they just took the template of it. But no.
Well, it's the restoration process you have to do. You have to replace some things because they're falling apart.
That's the same thing. If you have an old car and you restore it, it's the same thing. Yes, you're right. It's not the one that came out of the factory, but it is also as good as, and it's the basic shape and feel of it. And now it's special that it's been redone and relit, and people who are old get to see it, and people who have just come on to the fandom, they get to see it, and that's something special. I was lucky to.
The funny part is that if you're a brand new watcher to classic Star Trek, this particular model you probably will never see it on television because now it's been replaced with CGI. So you have to dig up the old copies where you actually see the very grainy special effect, matte line, covered.
It's very exciting that it's still there. And for me, here's another little thing. I was able to sit in a real real Batmobile, not one of the reproductions, one of the real Batmobiles, and with Adam West. Because of the job I have, he was a guest, and at the same time, they booked him with the Batmobile, and it was, how much better is it to be with Batman in the real Batmobile? And on top of that, in addition,
were you his boy wonder?
I guess I was. his young ward. My tights were a little too tight. But in addition to that experience, I was able to meet Mickey Dolenz, and it was at a Los Angeles Beverly Hills ceremony to honor Mike Love of the Beach Boys, and Mickey is there, and it's like, wow, Mickey Dolenz, and it's like great to see him. And the person who I work for, who would never, ever, ever in a million years be expected to do something like this, goes up to Mickey, and I saw Mickey briefly, and I waved to him, and I said hi. I said, nice to see you, and so I was fine with that. But my boss, let's say, comes up and goes, "You got a camera? You want to meet Mickey? Let's go. Come a minute." We walk up to him. Mickey's talking to somebody, politely talking. My guy goes, "Mickey, hey, James here, big fan, runs can you take a picture?" And my guy
who'd you work for? Were you working for Sinatra?
It's almost. So my guy takes the picture. Mickey's like, "Yeah, let's take a picture." So it's okay. We take the picture. Small talk. I move on. I look at the picture. The picture is as dark as, it's almost as if we took it at midnight outside in the woods. I could not believe my eyes. I'm like, thank you very much. This is great. It's a pleasure. I thanked my guy for doing it. And I just kind of walked back a little sad now. At this point, we went through this whole dog and pony show, and I've got nothing. So I forwarded to my friend as a joke, and I said, "Hey, look what so-and-so just did for me." And I figured he was going to laugh at it. He sent it back within 3 minutes, lit up, perfectly lit, well shot, and I couldn't believe my eyes. So now I have a fantastic picture with me and Mickey Dolenz. So I don't have the Batmobile picture anymore. It was taken on a Polaroid, and it was probably put into one of my archives somewhere. So I don't have that at my fingertips anymore. And I did have pictures from like I said, from the 70s or 80s when I went to the Smithsonian of the Enterprise. But again, that's in some scrapbook, who knows where. So it's too bad I can't see them, but now everybody can see them again and again and again forever.
Well, the last thing I would like to mention, having to do with Star Trek and the 50th anniversary, is that if you guys have a few bucks in your pocket, go to the post office. You can get your commemorative stamps.
They're so colorful.
A set of Star Trek stamps.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're very artsy, very artsy looking things. And if you're into collecting stamps, there's a whole set of Star Trek only stamps. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. But anyway, I want to thank James for joining me today, because, again, this is another one of these little weird offshoot shows that we do. And, we could spend an hour on each of these subjects, but we wanted to hit them all in one shot because it is a 50th anniversary. It's happened before with Doctor Who, and it's happened with Bond. So this one seemed like it was the proper time to talk about it. And thank you guys, as usual, for listening. And we will see you here soon at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Gotham Palace.
On tonight's show, Hector and the Ho-Daddies.
Holy, unholy alliance! Our greatest foes have reunited.
Let's go. To the Batmobile.
Let's go. Holy entree, Batman.
You fiends, you will rue this day.
The only rue here is in the gravy.
Hurry, Kate Crusader. You're our only hope. Not so fast.
But we're in a hurry, Batman.
Jaywalking is extremely hazardous.
Gosh, yes, you're right, Batman.
Quickly, Robin, to the crosswalk.
Hey, James here. Big fan.
Oh dear. Shoo shoo, ghastly beast.